know if you are making a mistake as a leader. It is very common for leaders as they are growing to want to know, am I making a mistake? Do you feel like you're making a mistake as a leader? In this video, I'm going to share with you my top 12 leadership failures that you may want to try to avoid if you are a woman in leadership, or you are a man in leadership, or you are someone that is thinking about becoming a leader and you're just not sure if you want to do it or not. This will set you apart from everyone else, and it will help you to save a lot of money, a lot of stress, a lot of heartache and frustration if you self-identify if these are an issue for you or not. Now, if you are new to me, welcome, welcome. My name is Dr. Jacinta, and I'm here to help you learn how to communicate more confidently and concisely under pressure. I focus more on those very high stakes, high pressure situations. If you happen to be dealing with anything like that and you are in my direct target audience as a woman in leadership, I provide executive coaching and consultation services to them in various ways. Feel free to take a look at my website at exciteexcellence.org under products and services. There's plenty of ways to support you. Most people start with an executive strategy session to start to develop a really good solid framework in terms of how they can move forward in their careers. Now, I have a list, and this is a live video, and there will be a point when the audience will join, but I'm going to read off all of the top 12 leadership mistakes that I see people make very quickly before the audience joins, because there likely will be some dialogue in between there. Now, as you know, I'm a public speaker. I do not like reading from notes, but because this is such an important topic, I do want to go over them. I want to give a special shout out to Kat 23rd for coming up with this topic. She mentioned this on one of the lives, and I appreciate her being a wonderful viewer, and I wanted to make sure that I was able to support her and many of the other individuals on my channel. Now, in terms of the top 12, here we go. The top 12 leadership failures that you want to avoid. We have number one, avoiding hard conversations or not advocating for yourself and your salary and your sanity. Number two, being indecisive. Number three, having an ego or forgetting about your journey. Number four, overthinking instead of acting. If you identify with any of these, you want to watch this video until the end. Number five, seeking validation instead of leading. Number six, not taking risk, personally and professionally. That's a huge leadership failure that you don't want to do. Number seven, letting pressure affect you and your team. Number eight, believing that everyone likes you. Number nine, not knowing how to manage high stakes situations, which you will absolutely learn here on my channel. Number 10, not communicating like an executive. This is a big failure that many people make. You want to avoid this one. Number 11, not following up. This is something that affects leaders. It affects entrepreneurs, business owners. Follow up is key. And number 12, poor execution of tasks, of situations, of whatever it is you're working on. Now, I'm going to give a highlighted insight on each one of these during the live today in hopes that it gives you some insight for you to avoid doing these mistakes. And if you have a specific mistake that you identify with and you want to get some support with, just place it in the comments below. We'll have a brief conversation about it, and I'll share with you some insights in terms of how you can avoid these type of mistakes. If you have identified yourself in any one of these, make sure you work on it. Make sure you take some time to think about it, because as I mentioned earlier, it will impact you. I personally have made some of these mistakes myself, and I have paid the price for them. And I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to pay the price like I did, which is why I want to talk to you about them. Now, the very first one I mentioned is avoiding hard conversations. Now, if you're watching live, welcome, welcome. Let me know if you have ever worried about having a hard conversation, whether it's negotiating your salary or having difficult feedback you're providing to a coworker or a team member or etc. Let me know in the comments below. I will share with you one of the reasons and why this is such a big failure is that when you are transitioning as a leader, it is expected that you are going to deal with some challenging situations and some very difficult conversations. Now, oftentimes what happens is that people are afraid of conflict. How many of you like having hard conversations? Probably not many of you. And if you don't like having hard conversations, let me explain to you why. I talk about this a lot on my channel, but I want to give you a very brief overview in terms of why you may be avoiding hard conversations. One, you may be avoiding a hard conversation because you just don't know what to say. You don't know what to say, when to say it, how to say it, and etc. Number two, you may be avoiding that hard conversation because you are a person that doesn't like conflict. That may be a reason too. Now I want to say hello to Glitterfish9. Hello, welcome, welcome. Hope you're doing well today. Let me know where you all are joining from in the big, beautiful world today. I am talking about leadership failures, my top 12 leadership failures that you will want to avoid at all costs if you are planning to be a leader, to be someone that is guiding other people, making a big impact, earning an additional salary. You just want to avoid these mistakes. And if you have identified yourself in any of the mistakes I mentioned, I have listed off all 12, but I plan on talking more about them, then let me know in the comments below and let's talk about them. I will go over them one by one. If you identify yourself in any of these mistakes, then let's have a conversation and let me help you as a public speaker, as an executive coach, as someone that has been in senior leadership roles as a C-suite executive and a director for over 20 years to help you really be able to move forward in your career. Now, I mentioned, for those of you just joined, welcome, welcome again. Let me know what part of the big, beautiful world, one, you're joining from. It's Friday here in the United States. So this is a great opportunity for us to have a conversation. Let's get to know each other. Let me know where you're joining from in the big, beautiful world today. And let me know what are some challenges you're facing right now as a leader. Let me know in the comments below. This channel focuses very heavily on high stakes, high pressure communication. You will learn advanced communication skills and strategies on this channel that will help you be able to communicate more confidently and concisely under pressure. If you happen to be in my target audience as a woman in leadership, you're welcome to reach out to me for an executive strategy session. If you are outside of the audience, perhaps you are a man in leadership or you are someone thinking about becoming a leader, then you will learn a tremendous amount of value from this channel because there are no other channels like this on YouTube. All right, I mentioned the very first leadership mistake that people make, or the failure people make, is avoiding hard conversations and advocating for themselves. If you're not comfortable having hard conversations, there's typically a reason why. You may be a person that avoids conflict. You may just not know what to say. If you are not at the point where you can start to learn how to master having hard conversations, it is going to cost you dearly as a leader because your role is to manage these situations. My second leadership failure that people make is indecision. How many of you have thought about making a decision and waited and thought about it and waited for it and thought about it again? It happens, but this is a leadership failure that you want to completely avoid. Why? Indecisiveness impacts you in multiple different ways. Indecisiveness can cause you to not appear confident to your teams. It can also prevent you from being able to move forward with whatever project, whatever business, or whatever it is that you're working on. Indecisiveness will hurt you. A lot of times people will want to just, kind of straddle the fence. They don't want to say yes. They don't want to say no. They don't want to say yes. They don't want to say no. They want to be right in the middle. Now, as a leader, there's times for you to be right in the middle, but you have to make a decision. This is what leaders do. So being indecisive is a critical leadership failure you want to forget. All right, I want to say hello to Rowing Expert. Hello, Tom. How you doing today? Tom says hello. Tom is back. Good to see you, Tom. Welcome back. Glad to see you here. Let me know what questions you all have about leadership failures. We're just going down the list of 12 right now. I'm on number 3. And if you have any insight on those, let me know. Tom says, well, fantastic. I'm glad you're doing well, Tom. Good to see you. The third leadership failure, and as I mentioned, these are just my top 12. There's a lot more failures. And if you've had failures as a leader that you want to share for the audience to avoid making mistakes that I've made, also put them in the comments below so everybody will watch it and learn from this particular video. We have a lot of people that will join us live, and then we have a lot of people that actually watch the replays. So my third leadership mistake that people make is ego, or forgetting their journey. How many of you have ever been in a situation where you've worked with a leader and they just seem like they're just better than you? Has it happened? It's happened to me before. And a lot of times what I've seen that happens to leaders, and this is why this is a failure I want you to avoid, is that when you have been promoted or advanced or worked hard for a promotion and you have advanced to a leadership role, it takes a lot of work to do that. And we all understand that it takes a lot of work. However, you don't want to get your ego in the way of this. What happens sometimes as leaders, what I've seen as being a reason why this is a big failure, is that leaders sometimes, when they are able to gain some influence, gain some authority, they will mistreat it or abuse it and not act accordingly. For example, I personally have been in a situation where I had someone that was promoted in a different department, and as soon as they got the title of manager, director, they essentially received the big head, as many people say. And if you don't know what the big head means, it just means that your head is just, too big for the room. It's floating in the sky because you think you're better than everybody else. And that particular person felt like they were better than everybody else. And when the team would come with a challenge, they would pretty much dismiss them like, oh, this is nothing. This isn't a big deal. I have all the answers. I'm the Wizard of Oz and I know everything. And this itself is a huge leadership failure that you absolutely want to try to avoid. Let me know in the comments below if you've ever worked with someone that has a big ego that is impacting how they lead their teams. Put it in the comments below. Let's talk about it. That's one you definitely want to forget. Okay, Tom says we call that the Peter principle. Yes, exactly. This is something that happens. People do this all of the time. When they get just a little bit of authority, a little bit of power, some people are just they're not really made for it, or they're not humble enough to have it, and they just completely just go off, just basically as Tom just said. Now, the fourth leadership failure that people make is overthinking instead of acting. Many times, and it somewhat leads into the second reason that I mentioned, which was indecision, or being very indecisive. Sometimes as a leader, there's so many things we're trying to process and figure out all at one time. Let me know if that's ever happened to you before. How many fires have you had to put out at once? A lot of times as a leader, you feel like you're a firefighter because you are putting out fires constantly. But sometimes we may get into the place where we just think too much. We're overthinking it. You do have to be very, very strategic in terms of what's going on, what's the next step, but you don't want to just think it to death where the building's on fire, so to speak, and you're still trying to figure out, well, how much water do I really need for this building? The building would have been burnt down by then. I give you that analogy because as a leader, you can't overthink. You have to think through the process and be the leader, but there comes a point when you just have to act, you have to do something. So Tom said there is a major distinction between importance and urgency. Tom, absolutely. There is a huge distinction between importance and urgency. And Tom, this was one I did not have on my top 12, but it is one of the ones that I talk about a lot with my audience. And what you're alluding to is being discerning. This is a bonus one because Tom brought it up. Being discerning is really important because a lot of times leaders get caught up in things and we don't know what's going on. We don't know what priorities we need to take because there's a level of that importance and urgency that they may not have mastered just yet to understand what's really important. Just because someone says, this is a fire over here, this is a big issue we're dealing with, that doesn't mean that it is urgent. And a lot of times as a leader, and let me know if this has ever happened to you before, people will come to you. They will come to you and say, oh my gosh, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. Elevated voice, very animated, all of that. And they will make you feel like, wow, this is a big deal. But if you are discerning and you start to develop what Tom mentioned in terms of determining that importance versus urgency, you can quickly say, okay, well, I appreciate you letting me know about this issue that's happening. This is something I will definitely take into consideration. I'll work on it. I appreciate you so much for bringing it to my attention. And move on, because it's not urgent or it's not something that you need to deal with right now. So being very discerning is critically important, and it is a huge leadership failure. I see so many people leader-wise, and I've made this mistake early on in my career, where I felt like everything that someone brought to me was a big issue and a problem. And in actuality, it is a problem I need to address, but do I need to address this now? Like right now? No, I don't. And in the past, many years ago, when I first started off as a leader, over 20 years ago now, I would think that everything is something I need to deal with because someone brought it to me, and I would stop what I'm doing and work on that. And I'd have something that was maybe a bit more urgent that I need to focus on because I'm trying to help my team. So keep that in mind. You don't want to make that mistake. And Tom, thank you so much for bringing that one up. The sixth one, number 5 I wanted to mention, is seeking validation instead of leading. And I'm only reading through notes because I have 12 of them here. You know me, as a public speaker, I would definitely not read from notes. But because there's so many, I said, let me make sure I get it correct. So if you're seeking validation instead of leading, that is a leadership failure. Remember, you are in a leadership role. Of course, you collaborate with your teams and you collaborate with maybe some of your peers or your coworkers or your colleagues. But there comes a point where you can't be in the position where you just have to ask permission, or is this okay? Is this fine? Did I do this correctly? There's a reason why you're the leader, or the reason why you've been trusted to be the leader. And this is something that you want to really work on. I've seen a lot of leaders, and let me know if this has ever happened to you or if it's ever happened to anyone you know, is that when they're in a leadership role, they feel like they are not supposed to be the leader. That imposter syndrome starts to work in. Imposter syndrome impacts women and it impacts men. And they feel like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea. I just completely lost it. And so they'll go to other people and they'll say, oh, do you think this is right? Did I do this correctly? I just want to make sure I don't make a mistake. And there's nothing wrong with you checking in, but don't feel like you have to seek validation for every single thing you're doing as a leader. There's a reason why you're a leader. Tom says, when I was an actuary, I had bosses who never validated me. Get the work done, Tom. 5 bosses at once. Oh, wow. Well, Tom, I know that was very, 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 very busy, and you had to get the work done. And I know that was a lot, especially when you were in that type of role. So I appreciate you sharing that one. We have Udon Toma. Hello, welcome, welcome. How you doing today? So the 6th leadership failure that I see people make that I don't want you to make, and this is a big one, and it's taking risk. If you do not take a risk, sometimes it can be very, 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 very difficult for you to move forward. Now, in your position as a leader, you can take risk, but remember, I'm not saying take a risk to risk everything, your department, your income, and all that. Be very calculated with your risk. Calculated risk makes sense. People that make risk just to say, I felt like it, I feel emotional about it, those people will really struggle as leaders, and that's something you definitely don't want to do. There's different ways you can take risk. Being strategic about it, and what we talked about yesterday, as I mentioned many, many times when I worked in developing health policy and etc. I explained to you all, when you're dealing with legislation, you're dealing with congressional leaders and etc. When you're dealing with policies, you have to think of what are the intended and the unintended consequences of this action, this policy, this whatever it is you're implementing. And if you take a risk and you don't consider that, you will fall short. Now, Tom says 80 hours a week. So Tom was doing a lot of work. 80 hours a week, Tom, that's a lot. How in the world did you survive, friend? I'm just curious to know. Okay, so OB Washington. Okay, so I know you're talking about something, but we're talking about leadership and being able to avoid leadership mistakes. So just keep that in mind. This is more of a serious topic that we're discussing right now. Tom says lived at work. Yes, Tom, I understand that. I've been through those situations where you're just at work all day, every day, in the evenings, early in the mornings, on the weekends. And it's definitely very challenging. I will say you do learn a lot about yourself in terms of what you can do and what you shouldn't do. So as you start to develop and you're in different roles, you determine that, okay, well, I can't do this anymore. I've done that. I've been there before. I don't want to do that anymore. So I know, yes, Tom, I understand living at work for sure. So I talked about taking risks. Sometimes you have to take calculated risks. Risk will sometimes help you to move forward a bit faster in your careers and your businesses, but you want to be very calculated on those risks. Don't make foolish mistakes if you can help it. Which is the reason why I'm talking about these top 12 leadership failures that I want you all to avoid. Now, my next one is letting pressure affect you and your team. How many of you have ever been in a situation where you've worked with a leader or a manager and they have came at you and just said, you need to do this, you need to do that? Tom, I bet you've had this happen to you before based on what you said. But they just come at you with this just energy of just urgency, frustration, like it's your fault. And it's not. What happens with leaders sometimes, and I see this happen a lot with, I would say, actually, no, I can't say that. I was going to say newer leaders, but I can't say that. I've seen CEOs of companies do this exact same thing. If the leader has not been really trained to learn how to manage their emotions under pressure or manage how they communicate under pressure, this is something that can cause you a lot of problems with this particular risk, this particular failure specifically. I have seen CEOs of companies who've received some maybe argumentative conversations with, let's say, a public official, a city official, someone elected to an office, and they bring that pressure onto the rest of us. Like, let's say the rest of us that were C-suites or the rest of us that were directors, and you feel that pressure. Now, sometimes there's ways you can communicate urgency when something's wrong, but you don't have to come at it and just basically let the room know you're mad and angry, and you're going to start flipping tables and doing crazy things. You don't want to do that. So when you are under pressure as a leader, you can be able to take that pressure, but when you need to communicate what needs to change with your team, you still have to communicate in a very polite, firm way, but not in a way to where you start acting in a way that's inappropriate, where you start raising your voice, you start getting upset, you're getting mad, and then you have to go back and apologize and say, oh, I'm so sorry. I had a bad day. They were giving me so much pressure. I'm sorry about that. You can say you're sorry, but that employee, that team member, that business associate you have is always going to remember, you know what, this person just went off on me for no reason. You don't want to be that kind of leader. That's a huge failure you want to avoid. Okay, so Tom says project scope constantly changed. Yes, and that's something, and that's another bonus, Tom. You come up with some really, really great insights to think about and to add to this list I just made up. Things change a lot as a leader. And sometimes the change can be helpful. Sometimes it can be completely chaotic. And it just depends on the situation. Chaotic is something we don't want to deal with. There has to be some structure to change. Being adaptable as a leader is something that is important too. I think many of us over the years, regardless of what industries we've been in, we've seen situations where we've had to make changes abruptly, very, very quickly. The most notable one I'd say recently would be in 2020 with the coronavirus pandemic. Everybody in the world had to make some really fast changes really quickly. I know I was a part of that. I was a C-suite at the time, and there's a lot of changes that I had to make very quickly to support my team. And you have to be adaptable as a leader. But sometimes when those project scopes changes quite a bit, It makes it somewhat very challenging to move forward if there's not clear direction in terms of why are we making this change? What is going on? What happened to all the work I already did? Did I just waste my time in my life? All those kind of questions, they come up. But being adaptable is an important aspect of leadership that you don't want to miss out on as well. Tom says, pressure on all of us. I can only imagine, especially with you working in that type of situation where you're working 80 hours a week. I can only imagine how stressful that was. Okay, Tom says, you are super intuitive. Well, thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. I have been through the fire, Tom. That's probably why I'm intuitive. I've been in some very, very friendly and very, very, very highly contentious situations, and I've seen quite a bit over the past 20 years or so. All right, the next one, this is one you definitely want to know if this has happened to you before. Another leadership failure that I'll mention to you, this is number 8 that we're on right now, outside the bonuses that Tom has helped to bring to our conversation today, is believing that everyone likes you. Now, a lot of times leaders, depending on who they are, they think everyone likes them. They genuinely think that. Why? They may be very charismatic. They may be able to communicate very well. When they speak to people, people are always all smiling. Hello, how are you? And something happens that you didn't know was going to happen. And you find yourself suddenly around people that don't like you, or you suddenly were stabbed in the back. Does this happen? Yes. And this is why this is a leadership failure I want you all to avoid. I personally have had situations that have happened to me in the past like this, which is why I'm sharing some of these with you so that you don't make these mistakes. You have to be mindful that because you are a leader, everybody does not like you. Sometimes what happens is that you would make decisions on certain aspects or certain situations that may be controversial, or it may be less popular, but you know it's the right decision for you to make. And sometimes people may not like it. Another reason why people may not like you all the time is you may be that person that really shines like a superstar. I will say, for those of you watching the videos or subscribe to my channel, you automatically are superstars, because the content that I share here is not just for someone that's just the average person. You're communicating at a higher level. And a lot of times when that happens, people start to see and say, wow, Tom is amazing. He gives great insight. Or Kat gives really great insight. She's amazing. And then some people will say, wow, this person is great. I really want to learn from them. But then you have those very quiet, jealous people that say, I don't like Tom, and I don't like Kat, and I don't like other people either. They're doing too much. They're really not that great. But you know that you are. And these individuals will smile in your face and make you think everything's okay, but they will be quietly stabbing you in the back, literally. And if you don't know what that means that someone is basically trying to sabotage you or discredit you some type of way behind your back, meaning that in front of you, they may communicate with smiles and happiness, and then behind your back, as soon as you're out of the room, they're just like, I don't like the way they speak. I don't know what they're doing. And they will just discredit you. So be mindful that everybody's not going to like you as a leader. They will not. Now let's go to number 9. So let me see what's in the chat. Insane channel. Okay. Hello and welcome. All right. So number 9, this is one that is really important as well. This is a leadership failure. Not knowing how to manage high stakes conversations. Now, as I mentioned on the channel many times, many leaders know how to communicate. They know how to communicate in a way that I would say would be your average way of communicating. But if you can start learning how to communicate in those very high stakes, very high pressure situations, then you will set yourself apart from everybody else. Let me know in the comments below, have you ever been in those very high pressure situations when you needed to communicate? How did it work out for you? What happened? And let's talk about it. And if you're struggling with anything, or if you've listened to any of these leadership failures that I've mentioned to you so far, and you thought to yourself, you know what? I made that mistake, or this is something I'm really struggling with right now, then feel free to contact me on any social media platform. You're welcome to leave a comment if you're watching the replay, or reach out to me at exciteexcellence.org, or on Instagram, or on LinkedIn, or on Facebook. I don't use Facebook that much, but you can contact me there. But you're welcome to reach out to me and we can talk about it. But remember, knowing how to navigate those very high stakes situations is a critical part of being a leader. If you're not able to do that, you will struggle, and you'll struggle to the point where the room is watching you struggle. And when the room watches you specifically struggle, this is something that you have to keep in mind. It will completely just damage you as it relates to your executive presence, your credibility, and everything else with the audience. So keep that in mind. You need to know how to manage high stakes situations. If you're not quite sure about how to do that, you are in the best place on YouTube to learn how to manage those high stakes situations. Just subscribe to the channel and give the video a thumbs up. Okay, number 10. Number 10 is not communicating like an executive. So let me give you an example of what I mean and why this is a huge leadership failure. How you communicate is important. And oftentimes it depends on the audience that you are communicating with. If you are in a leadership role and you are working in different types of communities, there may be ways, there may be words, there may be language that is very common to that community or that group or that business that you are interacting with. And it's okay for you to perhaps use slang or some other type of abbreviations for words and etc. in those communities. However, if you are a business owner and you are a leader in an organization, if you communicate with your teams and with everybody else using a lot of slang words or using words that may display that you are not as articulate, or maybe you are not as polished as a speaker or as a communicator in general. You don't have to be a public speaker. If you want to be one, you can. I can help you do that. Just contact me, let me know. But you have to communicate in a way that sounds like you know what you're talking about. Sometimes people, if they communicate in a way that is much more laid back or not as polished, it sometimes can come across as you may not know what you're talking about. Now, that's not always the case. As I mentioned, there's certain scenarios and certain situations where you have to adapt your communication style depending on who you're speaking to. If you were speaking to a group of kids, you would speak a bit differently to a group of kids than you would be to adults that are in a boardroom making multi-million and billion-dollar decisions. It depends on who you are communicating with. But it is a failure if you are a leader and you are not able to communicate like an executive. I have a masterclass that talks about this on my website, how to communicate like an executive. You're more than welcome to check it out. But there's a lot of things on there you would be surprised that will downgrade you as a leader if you're not really able to communicate at that higher level. All right, number 11, we're reaching the home stretch. Number 11 in terms of a leadership failure, and this is a big one. In this leadership failure, you will miss out on opportunities personally, professionally, in your business, out of your business, or in your organizations, is not following up. Now, there's a lot of things that come up with people when we are interacting as leaders in communities, or leaders in businesses, or in our own businesses, or within organizations. We meet people, we say, oh, hello, we have a wonderful conversation, and we just forget about it. Now, if you take the time to follow up with that person, you may be able to build a relationship with them or develop some type of partnership with them so that it's mutually beneficial to not only you and your business, or you and your organization, or you and your department. It helps everybody, and it helps the community as well. A lot of times I see leaders struggle with this because we are so busy putting out the fires that we talked about earlier today, and a lot of the challenges that we deal with, and we just are dealing with too much. And we forget that we have to be very strategic in how we think and how we process information. And being able to follow up with other people, regardless of your role, is a critical part of developing a strategy. If you can follow up with someone and you had a great conversation with them, you never know where that will lead to. It could lead to a business opportunity. It may lead to a conversation that you have later. And let's say if you're in a role specifically and you've decided that you want to transition into something else, that individual, that person may have an opportunity just for you because you've already had a relationship with them. So not following up is a huge leadership failure that you want to avoid as a leader. And number 12, I want to say is poor execution. Now, let me give you a couple of examples on this. And then if anything comes up to my mind as I'm talking to you about some additional aspects of leadership failures that I can think of that I didn't list, I'm just going to talk about them just for a few moments. Not having good execution or having poor execution is a tremendous leadership failure. You do not want to be that person that comes up with the big event, the big plan, the big project. You have everything together. You've worked with your teams. You came together with everyone. You have it all figured out, but your execution does not reflect that level of planning. How many of you have ever been in a situation where you've attended an event or worked on a project, as Tom mentioned earlier, and you found that the idea was great? This is a really fantastic idea, but the way it was played out in its execution was not ideal. It may have been something that caused a lot of stress. The timing was off. The logistics were terrible. There could be so many reasons that it made the situation not ideal. Let me know if that's ever happened to you in the comments below. Why is poor execution a failure? If you put everything together and put your time, your energy into a project, an event, and you can't execute it, then you're not being a leader. Leaders are the ones that are executing the big ideas, the projects, whether large or small. And if you are not able to execute it, it makes it extremely, extremely, extremely difficult for you to be able to showcase yourself as a leader. Now, I'll give you an example that happened to me personally many, many, many times ago, many years ago. I've talked to you about this previously, and I'm going to focus mostly on execution as it relates to communication. Many years ago, I was featured on the news, and it was myself and another coworker of mine. Both of us were in C-suite roles and in very highly visible roles in the community. And there was a specific event that was being hosted by the organization we were working for. And we were speaking on behalf of it. I was the primary event organizer. The individual that was with me was a very critical part to the organization. And we had a conversation with the news anchor about it. Now, what happened? We did all of this planning for the event and got everything together, organized it. And now it came time for us to market it, to publish it out, to mention it to the community and the world. We're hosting this type of event. Please come. We're going to be doing this, 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 and this. And we want you to be here. Now, what happened? What happened? Well, I've done a lot of organizing everything, organizing vendors, organizing this massive, massive event. And the individual I worked with or spoke was with me. When it came time for them to speak about it, the execution it just wasn't there. It just wasn't there, everybody. They asked a question and the person just went, poof, blank on news and just literally was silent for a little bit. Now, I tell you, and I work with you all specifically on silence and how silence can be used to help you. Silence can hurt you. This particular situation, the execution of the communication, it did not go well. Things ended up picking themselves up, but initially it came across as, wait, this person can't speak. What's going on? That is one way execution can be poor. If you plan this massive event and your massive project, let's say an event, for example, and let's say you publish your event, you got everybody organized, but then when people come, there's really long lines, things are disorganized, no one knows who's supposed to be where or doing what. That's poor execution. And poor execution is the fastest way for you to lose credibility and the fastest way for you to lose your executive presence too as a leader. The next time you have something big that you're thinking about, you're planning for, and etc., take some time, please, to go into the details and become the operator. We talked about this a little bit earlier in one of our number 3 failure, leadership failure, and that was the ego and people forgetting their journey. You don't want to be that leader that forgets about the little things that actually make the big difference to whoever it is you're working with. And if you design something and you don't execute it well, you will be that person that forgot about the timing, breaks, the scope of the project. You'll forget all those little things. And so sometimes as a leader, even though we are highly focused on the big picture in terms of what's going on overall, what is the big vision here, where we're going to be at in a couple years as an organization, etc. Sometimes we have to get into the operator seat, meaning we have to get into the seat to say, okay, even though I'm focused on the big picture and the big vision, there are still logistics, right? There's still these pieces I have to put together to make sure this is going to be an amazing project, an amazing event, amazing business venture, or etc. Don't forget that. Don't forget that you have to go down to operator level to know everything, to know what's going on. I used to say this to some of my team members many years ago. The master knows everything, right? The master knows everything in terms of being the operator. They know how to run everything down to the most smallest detail. The master knows everything, but does the master do everything? No. Think about it if you were training in martial arts or something like that. You're working with the master, you're working with the sensei. They know how to do everything, but do they do it all? No, they don't. So keep that in mind when you are a leader and you are trying to plan something big. Don't forget about those small details that will truly impact you as you are developing yourself as a leader. Now, those are my very top 12, and we came up with a couple of bonuses with Tom today, and I appreciate his insight on those. But we came up with a total of 14 leadership mistakes or leadership failures that people make as they are trying to govern themselves or advance themselves as leaders. So I want to know from you, which of these mistakes have you made? I've made all of them. I've made every one of them, which is the reason why I want you to not make these mistakes. But let me know which mistake really stood out to you. Which mistake are you going to try to start working on? And which mistake do you know that is costing you your career or your advancement and etc. that you need some direct support on? Now, whatever that mistake is, that's when you want to reach out to me. If you're a woman in leadership, feel free to contact me. Let's talk about it and let's move forward. I want to add one more leadership failure, and it somewhat goes into the first one in terms of avoiding those hard conversations. But I would like to take it just a step deeper, if it's okay with you. One of the leadership failures I see people make all the time, and you would be baffled that people make this mistake, is that they don't advocate for themselves in their salaries. How many of you struggle with that? I've struggled with it many years ago. Many of you know my story in terms of why I have been very aggressive salary-wise as a W-2 employee. Now I'm an entrepreneur. But not advocating for your salary, you would be surprised how many people struggle with this. Why do I say this is a leadership failure? If you're not able to lead yourself, it makes it difficult for you to lead your team. And if you're not able to lead your team, then it's very difficult for you to be the leader. You have to take care of yourself. And advocating for yourself and your sanity and your income is something leaders tend to shy away from. I don't know why, but I believe a lot of times as individuals, we do not feel like we are worth a certain amount of money. I have worked with a lot of clients over the years, and my clients, one of the areas that they struggle with the most when, let's say, for instance, if we're working on them preparing for high stakes interviews and etc., one of the aspects that they struggle with the most is not being able to negotiate or advocate for themselves as it relates to their salary. What happens and what I've seen happen, and you let me know in the comments below if this has ever happened to you, but when they get in front of the hiring manager or that individual, because they are on the opposite side, so they are the person that is on the receiving side of the information, there's a certain amount of I would say, authority or power that person feels like they are just completely just surrendering because they're the one that is in need of a position. And I encourage my clients to not think that way. You have something to offer the organization just like they have something to offer you. And it's not a matter of, oh, I just need to take this position. No, you want to be selective and make sure it's the right fit for you and you're being compensated accordingly based on your expertise. What I've seen a lot of my clients struggle with is literally, and this is what I want you to practice and work on, literally saying how much they want to be paid or saying what they feel like they're worth. Just the fact of saying it out loud, people struggle with it. They can think about it. They may say, I know I'm worth $250,000 a year. But when it comes to like actually saying it, it doesn't happen. Why is that? Because there's something subconsciously within ourselves that feels like we are not worth it. And I cannot tell you how many leaders I have seen that are stuck at the same salary they were at many years ago, and they are frustrated with themselves in terms of why they have not advanced in their specific industry, in their specific roles, earning more income, because they have not learned from their mistakes of not advocating for themselves. Keep this in mind. Advocating for yourself and your salary should be at the top of your list of things for you to avoid making a mistake on as a leader, because I guarantee you, whatever you accept in terms of your salary, you will stay there unless you move. And if you move to another role, you don't want to be that person that is just not moving in the positive direction. So keep that in mind. That's something I just thought of that I did want to share as another leadership failure, because I see this one happen often. There's one more I want to share with you. As I mentioned, I had my top 12. Tom provided at least an additional 2. And now I have another one. So we're going on we have 15, now we have 16. Another leadership failure that I see people do is they have a very, very, I would say, hard time being able to really focus on what they need to do. It kind of ties into that discernment and importance and urgency Tom talked about, but I mean specifically being on time for meetings. Many people think, oh, I just don't need to do that. I don't need to be on time. But I will encourage you to think about things differently. When you are a leader, you have to be a bit more aware of people and their time. And you don't want to be that person that is, let's say, going to a meeting, you're always constantly late for the meeting, or you come in 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes late, and you're not being respectful of everyone's time. Try not to do that. That's a leadership failure. Many people think, well, they don't worry about it. All right, my job I work at is pretty lax. They don't really care. They're not really worried about it. Don't think that. Don't take that for granted. And it goes back to my other one that I mentioned to you before. Don't think that everybody likes you as a leader. Please don't think that. Maybe people do like you, but you have to remember that there may be some people that don't, so that you're not blindsided. I don't want you to be blindsided if you're subscribed to my channel. But keep in mind, you have to be respectful of people's time and be really focused on being on time. As a leader, it sets the tone for everyone else. Therefore, when those times come up, when you need to persuade your audience, you need to influence them, or you have a big agenda you're trying to accomplish, all of those little aspects that you are doing as a leader, they do start to pile up. And when that time comes when you need to advocate for yourself or your department, your team, and your business, then people will say, okay, yeah, I know that this person is pretty focused. I know they're on point with everything for the most part. They execute very well. We probably want to listen to what they have to say. Versus the person that comes in, just kind of strolls in when they want to, and they're very late all the time. It can make it sometimes very, very difficult for them to be taken very seriously because the room, I would say, thinks that they are not necessarily taking their role seriously. Let me know which of these were your favorite, or which ones were your favorite. Sorry about that. I appreciate you all so much for watching this. And once again, I want to give a shout out to Cat 23rd for, sorry, I keep kicking this, for Cat 23rd for the topic in terms of leadership failures. If you take a few moments and you go through the list that we came up with today, it will give you some things to think about as a leader that you might be struggling with. Now, I want to know from you, if there's any other failures that you've seen that happens with leaders, let me know in the comments below because we can talk about those. And if you'd like for me to do a follow-up video on this topic specifically, let me know. Let me know on any of the videos that you watch or on this video specifically. If you're watching the replay, I do reply to my comments. So let me know how I can support you or what challenges that you're facing right now and what you'd like to see on the channel. I'm here really to support you all and help you to advance in how you're communicating so that you are able to communicate more confidently and concisely under pressure. I do have a specific assessment that I'm offering for a limited time for my target audience. It is called the High Stakes Communication Assessment. If you've ever found yourself perhaps transitioning into a new role or feeling like you're losing a bit of influence in your departments, your business, or your organizations, and you want to just have a check to see, am I really communicating at that higher level? Is there something, are there situations I'm avoiding? This is an assessment I'm doing. Feel free to contact me on any social media platform and just mention High Stakes Assessment, and I'll be happy to share with you the link for that. It is something that is something I'm doing right now. It is a 15-minute assessment, so if you need that, let me know. All right, let me take a look at the chat. Yassine 95K9W, hello, welcome back. Hope you're doing well today. Yassine says, where are you? Where have you been? Hello, I'm doing well. I've been here. I'm live pretty consistently, and I know you were on the live earlier this week, so really good to see you again, and let me know where you all are joining from. So we've talked about several things so far, and as many of you know, Friday nights are really my time to spend more time with you, Q&A wise and etc. So I appreciate you all for being here today and talking with me, and I appreciate Tom for bringing up some really great insights about aspects to consider in terms of leadership failures, what can happen. Let me know what other topics you want to learn about on the channel. I will see you all next Tuesday when I go live in the morning. In the meantime, if you have any questions, you let me know, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye for now.